And it's episode 1 of the Heurmann Murder trial, and you can read the details of what goes on at this podcast at heurmannmurdertrial.com. I'm your host, Glenn Fleetwood, former criminal attorney for 33 and a half years, till I hit big 65. Anyway, what happened this morning? Well, as you know, Rex Heurmann was arrested by Long Island PD in conjunction with 2 other agencies, and arrested, we all believe, well, we're certain, for the murders of preliminarily 4 of the bodies that they found in Long Island. As you know, this is the case. It's commonly referred to as LISK, L-I-S-K, Long Island serial killer. Now, it's been quite a while, and people are really surprised that this came out of the blue. But it looks like, except for a period where there was some scandal in the NYPD, that they've been working on it the whole time. And as you have to understand, there is a connection here between the Golden State Killer and the LISK killer. The person who's charged with that is Rex Heurmann, but we're not going to say he did it because we don't know if he did it or he didn't. As a matter of fact, at this early hour of the day, we don't exactly know what he's charged with. It's going to be interesting to see if he's charged with 1 murder, 4 murders, or 10. And in fact, there's a little known murder out of 1998. And it looks like they believe he did it, but we don't know if he did or he did not. And we don't know if he did any of them, actually. So let's look into what the point is here. What is the connection between the Golden State Killer and Rex Heurmann, the suspect in the LISK killing, Long Island serial killer? There's a very strong, I can't say a connection, but a similarity between the 2 cases. A very striking fact in both. And it's the kind of fact that should give all our outstanding criminals, and by outstanding I don't mean good, I mean the ones that are not caught yet, should give them reason to think about maybe going into another line of work. Who knows what that is? All right. Do I see any? Oh, I see a hand up. What? No, it's not that they're both tall. They are both tall, it looks like. No, I'm sorry, that's not it. Okay. Well, I'll just tell you. They were both discovered, the police got their lead by familial DNA in one of these, hey, send us your DNA and we'll tell you your familial lineage, where all your ancestors came from, as if that would be something you would be happier knowing. That's how they got Sunshine Killer, the Golden State Killer. They said, hey, let's look in there. We've got some DNA. And they were smart enough to say, we're not going to look for a match, because if he's not in there, and he was a very smart guy, so his DNA was not in there. But they said, what we're going to do is set down the specificity within which our search will look for this particular batch of DNA, the sample they had from the Golden State Killer, and said, let's just look for maybe 4 out of the 10 normal matches we look for. And they found some person, and they knew that he wasn't the killer because his DNA didn't match, but they also knew that he was related to the killer. Well, guess what? That worked so well that the police in New York said, "Aye, let's give that a shot." So they had gotten, and I do not know if this was before or after, but I think it was well after they learned about how California police got the drop on them with the Golden State Killer. They got a sample out of a disused pizza box that still had some pizza scraps in it, eaten by our man Rex. And no, we're not going to be calling him that. That would get very annoying after a while, wouldn't it? So they put our man Rex, they put his sample of pizza to the lab, got a sample of his DNA, put his sample of DNA into one of these, probably into all of them. But anyway, they're not disclosing how or which, but one of them said, hey, you know what? We got a resemblance here. We have a family member of the guy whose DNA you're looking for. Oh, really? So they, of course, said, who is that? And they get a person's name, and the police then, what happened is, what they do is they go over to that person and they say, look, don't worry. We know it's not you. Your DNA does not match. But who do you know who lives in New York, who's a male, and has a house, probably, and it's very near Long Island, and he probably is in his 40s, 50s, or even up to 60. He's 59 now. And whoever the person was whose DNA they'd sent their DNA into this lab, or into this program where you have them do your research on your background. And he said, oh, Uncle Rex. Yeah, he lives out there, Long Island. Uncle Rex, yeah, he's kind of a quiet, withdrawn guy. He's an architect. Manhattan. And they said, thank you. And that's how they got their guy. Isn't that amazing? They had some leads with phone. They're also saying it was the phone that got him, but nah, the real way they got him was through the familial DNA match, through DNA.com or one of those family type things. That reminds me, I have one of those kits that I set aside and I never, anyway. So if you're wondering about, is that which way they found him, I think that it's unclear at this point. Now, because he pled not guilty, that's very unusual, very unusual. Normally, in this quick, you would ask for a continuance and say, we need to look at all the evidence before we plead. But from what they're saying on the tubola, he actually pled not guilty, which, sometimes you do that because you want to start a clock ticking, because under the constitutional right to a speedy trial, there are different time limits under which if you plead not guilty, unless you waive that time, they have to get you to trial or you walk away. And that is a chess game played by defense attorneys like I was, and prosecutors, and they say they can't ask for a continuance. I've heard that theory many times. I'm not sure it's legal. But the point is that we have to go through, once we go through with pleading not guilty, then there's a time limit to get us to trial, and so we do everything we can to prepare in that short amount of time so that we won't have to ask the court for more time. So they have started a very short clock. I don't know how anybody could be prepared for trial in the 45 days that they've got under the statute, but that's what both sides will try to do. They'll try to be ready within 45 days. 99 times out of 100, the defendant comes in with a baleful or sheepish look on their face and say, Judge, which is the wrong thing to say. You're actually supposed to say, Your Honor, we overestimated our abilities to prepare for this trial. We're not ready. Can we have more time? And the judge always says, yes, you may, if you waive time. In other words, if you give the prosecution more time to bring you to trial. That's how it's always done. It's very common. They say yes. Now, I have some judges who, once you come in like the 14th or 15th time, will say, hey, come on, when are we going to trial on this thing? But I have other judges I know, real sweethearts who will just say, all the time you need. The Constitution says so, as long as you agree to waive time, so you're not going to claim that you lost your speedy trial rights. You can have all the time you need, and that's a very comfortable feeling to be in those people's courts. All of those judges who have told me that at one time or another were in state court, not in federal court. So that's what's going to happen here. He pled not guilty. Normally, that would have triggered the prosecution's obligation to provide what's called discovery. Discovery is the huge packet of documents and other types of evidence that the prosecution has compiled over all this time, and to give their copy of it to the defense attorney. And that is just a humongous mountain of work. And so right about now, it'd be very common within the next week for the defense attorney to say, holy cow, I didn't realize what they were going to be dumping on my doorstep. Holy moly, I'm not ready for this, Your Honor. All right, well, then we'll give you 6 months, but you have to waive time. So that now the prosecution has 6 months plus 45 days to bring your case to trial. How is that? And you always say yes. And they say, okay, shake hands, goodbye. I guess you don't shake hands because of COVID. And that's what happens in a case like this. Remember, the prosecution will be using the same old argument they've always made about claiming they never had anyone in mind. That's not true. They had a couple other people in mind, including the chief of police. And the chief of police in this case, not the current one, but the one who was investigating the crime, got arrested and thrown in jail. Oh my God, that's embarrassing. But as did one of his underlings. But it's not the biggest deal now. But also, you'll hear the defense attorney commonly going on saying, "Now remember, in this country, everyone is no, they're not. Everyone is presumed not guilty until they have been." No, they're not. That's bull. That's just a way of trying to get the people on the jury in your pocket. No, the only people who have to presume him not guilty are the jury members. I don't have to. You don't have to. We can presume him guilty right now and carry a sign in front of the courthouse saying he's guilty. Although if we did that, the judge would probably say, well, get away from the doors. You could be negatively influencing members of the jury. So every time you hear a defense attorney, or in this case it'd be the defense attorney, saying, remember, you people at home, you must presume, like everybody in the United States must do, that he is not guilty until... No, you don't. This is crazy. The jury has to abide by that semantic game. You do not. Otherwise, you and I would have to say, well, remember Hitler. Hitler was not found guilty. Nobody ever put Hitler on trial, so he's not been proven guilty of anything. So that's absolutely not true. Well, I'm going to let today's episode go. We'll be back in 2 more days with a total wrap-up of what was actually in the packet of discovery. I've got it right here, and I've looked at it, and it has a detailing of all of the phone calls, and especially the burner phones. It looks like they really, the police, and when I say they, I meant the police really did a pretty good job of tracking down the burner phones and showing how what really got them onto Rex. See, I told you we were going to go over this in 2 days, but well, one of the things that really got them was that when his wife's phone went out of town is when the murder occurred. And they said that is more than a coincidence. His wife goes out of town for 5 days. Actually, her phone did. But yeah, that meant she was out too. And during the 5 days that his wife was in another state, that's when the murder occurred. One of the murders. So they said, this is our guy. Also, another one is that, as you know, this despicable scumbag called the family, especially the sister, of one of the young prostitutes that he killed. And he tortured the sister with things about, I'm watching your sister's body rot in front of me. Right in front of me. So he would call her and tell her things like that. Oh, she gets the last laugh because the telephone tower pings showed that he was on the train coming in from Penn Station. That's a very, very big train station in New York. There's 2 big ones, and that's one of the 2 big ones. So it showed the train station coming in from Penn Station to Long Island, which is where a lot of rich people live. And so they knew that the bad guy was somebody who took the train from work at the end of the day in roughly central New York, and took the train home to Long Island, which meant they had a nice, healthy income. And it also meant that they could then try to triangulate. So if he goes from here to Long Island, here's where the murders occurred, where do you think he would live? And they can tell by where he got off the train. Oh, just draw a circle around that particular train station, and they've got a rough idea of what neighborhood he lives in. Ain't that and so that's some of the ways that they got this guy. I think it could have been done in a couple of years if they'd really put their mind to it, but we don't know that. But if you'll just remember that today is Friday, if you'll just listen on Monday, and remember, I know you're tired of hearing this, please subscribe, click like, give me a thumbs up. I haven't charged you anything, right? And I'm not going to. Subscribe, and if you'll hit the notify bell, so that means that when the episode comes out Monday, and by Monday I will have read the document I've got here, which is the application for a warrant. And it's just so crammed with good stuff about his use of burner phones and how they found the burlap. It's not regular burlap. We're talking about the women, by the way, that were the first ones that were found dead were wrapped in burlap, but it's not the kind of burlap that you would see at a gardening store. It's a completely different kind of burlap that if you looked at it, you wouldn't know it was burlap. But anyway, I'm Glenn Fleetwood, former criminal defense attorney. How about reformed criminal defense? No, I hate it when people say that. I had nothing to be reformed. The bar needed to be reformed with the fucking psychopaths that worked there. But maybe on that topic we'll talk next Monday when you and I talk. We'll talk about which judge is it over in Pasadena that is a complete psychopath that you can walk into his courtroom, take a look, and say, this guy is fucking nuts. He is a fucking nut. Well, we'll talk about it on Monday. Anyway, see you then on Monday the 17th. And just put your bell on, click the bell, and you'll get a notice when this episode is ready. And thanks for listening. And don't forget to please, if you want to hear more about the Heurmann and about Rex Heurmann, or about, as we call it, the Long Island sex killer trial, you have to subscribe, like, and ring the bell. I know you're so tired of hearing that, but that's about how the computer program organizes the podcasts and which one is the most popular and which one they're going to advertise the most. So please, if you're interested in Mr. Heurmann, Heurmann, I think is the correct pronunciation, and it has a very odd spelling too. I think it would be German. And if you're interested in Rex, definitely German. So then give us a listen on Monday, and on Monday I will go over with you the very, very, very detailed application for a search warrant. And so, in other words, that's where the police spill their hands as to what did they have that entitled them to go to a secret grand jury, show them what they had in the way of evidence, and get a warrant to arrest this man. And other than that, thanks for listening. I'll see you on Monday.